Here's my list for the top 10 Seinfeld characters. I've included characters big and small based on how much I enjoyed them during the show. However, I did not include characters whose face we never saw, so no Lomez, Bob Sacamano, or George Steinbrenner. Here we go. Number 10, Kenny Bania. He's the inept comedian who plays the same clubs as Jerry. Jerry cannot stand him and definitely does not want to go to dinner with him. Kenny eventually seems to get a break as his show becomes a hit, he lands a TV pilot deal, scores Jerry's ex-girlfriend, and even George is forced to admit he's a closet Bania fan. How could he not be? Banya's humor is simple and doesn't make you think too much. Number 9, Jay Peterman. Based on the real-life Jay Peterman catalog, Seinfeld created this fictional version of its namesake. He is portrayed as an eccentric, globe-trotting ladies' man who has a knack for walking by Elaine's office and overhearing at the worst times. Nonetheless, he is likable and by far the most fun of Elaine's bosses. Number 8, Tim Whatley. This is when the world was introduced to Bryan Cranston. His character just seemed to get more absurd with every appearance. By the end of the show, he had converted his dental practice into a sex lair, established himself as a re-gifter, and converted to Judaism just so he could tell Jew jokes. Number 7, David Puddy. David is Elaine's on-again, off-again boyfriend and car mechanic who does not want to be called a grease monkey. In a show where characters tend to overthink everything, he provides contrast as a character who underthinks. When Elaine or someone else questions his method, he just confidently says, "Yeah, that's right." Number 6, Frank and Estelle Costanza. I decided to count them as one character since they usually came as a package deal, although they did split up for a while on the show. As far as I'm concerned, there are two types of parents in the world. The sweet but slightly naive parents that Jerry has on this show, and then the overbearing, critical, and sometimes downright insane parents that poor George wound up with. Frank is an endless source of bizarre ideas, like creating his own holiday Festivus. This is while his wife and son look onto his schemes with horror. Estelle nags both her husband and son to a point where they both go batty. It probably would not be fun growing up in a house like this, but it sure is fun to watch in small dosages. Number 5. Hello, Newman. We're not sure if Newman is his first or last name, but we do know that he is the most common minor character on the show to a point where he almost seems like a major character. He's the chubby postal worker who is often an accomplice in Kramer's many schemes. I always loved the fact that Newman seemed weirdly educated and talked in a poetic manner. While he and Jerry are sometimes forced to be allies, they usually serve as enemies who greet each other with the famous lines, "Hello, Jerry." "Hello, Newman." Number 4, Jerry Seinfeld. He had to rank pretty high. After all, the show is named after him. Nonetheless, Jerry is probably the least exciting of the 4 main characters. This isn't because he's a bad character, it's just a testament to how well he and Larry David built the cast around him. Jerry plays the role of straight man who exists on almost every sitcom. His humor usually comes as a reaction to the insanity that goes on around him, and then the occasional one-liner. However, as a professional comedian, he's very good at this. You never get to a point where you find him boring or wish they would drop him from the show, like other sitcom straight men. I'm looking at you, Ted from How I Met Your Mother. When you actually think about it, none of the 4 main characters on Seinfeld were all that original in their basic conception. They're all just standard comedy stock characters. Seinfeld just does an incredible job with all of them. Then you add in all the wild minor characters on the side. Seinfeld was also not the first show about nothing. What was Cheers besides a show about nothing? Some sitcoms you can say they were about something, like MASH was about the Korean War. But even then, most of the plot lines had nothing to do with the war. Seinfeld just did nothing better than other shows. It had all those fun little side conversations which had nothing to do with the plot. And then, the plot lines themselves were zany ideas that could have only come from the mind of Larry David. Number 3, Elaine Benes. Once again, it's not unusual to have the leading lady on a sitcom be the ex of the leading man. But it is unusual for her to be incredibly funny in that role. Elaine is just like the guys, just as shallow and just as neurotic. Her adventures often revolve around her strange bosses and her more looks than brains boyfriends. It's all funny to watch. Good on the writers for never having her get back with Jerry for a serious relationship at any point in the series. Seinfeld was smart to avoid that cliche. Number 2, Cosmo Kramer. Do I actually have to say anything here? If you do not understand Kramer's appeal, then you just must not have a sense of fun. And finally, number 1, George Costanza. George was originally based off of Larry David. Jason Alexander said that his act as the character began as a Woody Allen impression. Regardless, most of us feel like, on some level or another, George was based off of us. He's a lazy, dishonest, self-hating, slow-witted bald man, and that's why we love him. We wouldn't want him any other way. If you actually think about it, he was pretty successful by the end of the series. He worked in the New York Yankees front office for a while and dated numerous beautiful women. I guess he can serve as inspiration for all the underachievers in the world. But they too can succeed if they apply themselves correctly. Honorable mentions have to go to Mickey Abbott, Mr. Kruger, Jackie Chiles, and of course Jerry Seinfeld's fictional family. Happy Festivus, everybody.